Welcome to the MVP show. Today we're chatting with Stephen Weaver. He's a business applications MVP, been in the program 15 years. How long is that? Probably the longest standing MVP we've currently had on the show, which I just think is fantastic. Has some interesting stories there around how his employer got him to change his online name, so they didn't, if he made a mistake online, they didn't want to have it coming back on them, which is, something I doubt would happen these days. Anyhow, full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/171. Now, let's get on with the show. Hey, Stephen, welcome to the MVP show.
Thank you very much for having me, Mark.
It's good to have you on air here. You come from, is it the AX side of your world experience? Is that right?
I'm in the AX world now. I was originally on the NAV side, the now BC world. So when I first became an MVP, it was for my Navision contributions.
Wow. Okay, so that was some good time ago. But before we get started, tell us, where in the world do you live? And what do you do for entertainment when you're not working?
I live in Southampton, which is about 50, 60 miles south of London on the south coast of England, the United Kingdom. And for entertainment, I have a very active family. So I have a 13-year-old and a 12-year-old, two boys, Adam and Ethan, and I spend an awful lot of my time ferrying them to different clubs and watching them play sports.
Wow. And what type of sports?
The eldest plays rugby. He plays for the local Eastleigh Pirates club. That's Adam. And Ethan plays football for Wyvern Wolves, which is another local team.
So is there any rivalry between the rugby and the footy?
Not really. My youngest used to play rugby, but he's slight of frame, so he used to come off getting injured quite a lot, and then retired after a couple of years and decided to take the gentler form of the sport in football.
Yeah, I mean, me coming from New Zealand, rugby is pretty much the national sports for New Zealand, although we do have soccer or what you're calling footy. Yeah. And so tell us, Southampton, what's the things to see and do in Southampton?
It's predominantly a port, so we get lots of cruise liners coming in and out, and it's famous for its boat show. I prefer to go more inland, and being quite close to London, it's quite easy to pop to London or to pop to somewhere like Winchester, which is another local city. And not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with Southampton, but it's like most major cities. It has its high spots and places to eat, shows to see. So we're off to the, as we're coming up to Christmas, we're off to the pantomime as a family on Christmas Eve. See the pantomime.
And so tell me what, I've never understood. What is a pantomime?
It's a family live theatre show which contains stage jokes and songs. And it's probably very peculiar to the United Kingdom, but we get maybe minor celebrities or maybe more senior celebrities to come and play roles they would not normally play. So we have the lead singer of the band from the 80s, Wet, 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 playing Captain Hook in Peter Pan this year. It's that sort of level of entertainment.
Yeah.
Certainly not highbrow.
Cool. I've been to Winchester. I went there earlier this year. I had a friend that lives down there, and her boss lives down there, and so we're on his estate for a bit, which was quite nice.
Yeah, it's a very nice old city, and it has a replica of the Round Table in one of its major halls from the King Arthur and his knights legend.
Wow. Interesting. So you've been an MVP for what, 15 years, 16 years?
It is 15 years now, yes.
Wow. Man, you must be one of the longest standing MVPs in biz apps. Is anyone longer than you in the business application space?
I don't know, to be honest. It's not something I've ever looked at. It's now something I might have to look at. There were some around the time when I started, but a lot of them were US based, and Microsoft seemed to have recruited them in their time. So
yeah. I mean, I've come from a CE kind of background or the CRM side of things, and I think the longest standing one in that is around 13 or 14 years. So, yeah.
There are certainly MVPs that have been around since the start, and they're on 20 plus years. But in biz apps, I don't know, and it's a very fluid area that we work in with lots of new technology. So probably not, but I don't know.
And there's no way anybody could be 20 years in biz apps because it was. Oh no, maybe there could be because GP has been around at least 20 years with Microsoft,
Yeah.
hasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. More, I would say. But yeah, I don't know. I think I think I was the second year when they opened it up to the Navision world. I didn't know anything about it when I was nominated at the time, but I think I was the second year because there were a group of people in front of me at the time who were running user groups.
So what was the nomination process like back then? What was involved?
I don't know because I just got nominated. So I was
You don't know who did
a
it?
yes, it was a an MVP called Eric P. Ernst. So it was still MVP-led nominations, although he was one of the first NAV MVPs. So I'm not sure how he got it, but he must have been nominated by Microsoft themselves. So he ran, well, he does run dynamicsuser.net, which was one of the oldest still going forums and areas for Microsoft Business Solutions resources. And it was before Microsoft Communities was set up. So I think he set that up. I think it was the late 90s, he said, when it was a mailing forum. So they used to mail to people and then get responses that way.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. And so kind of, one of the things I know that we're hit up often nowadays is kind of contributions. And so what does that mean for you?
It's for me, the forums are where I have been most prominent. I would say that my contributions have lessened in recent years. So dynamicsusers.net is still one that I'm on. I'm not on as myself. I'm on as AdamRoue, so I have a different username for that, and I am Weaveriski on the community forums, so the Microsoft-led community forums. And there used to be quite a few business solutions forums, but these days I think Microsoft have done a very good job of driving people to their communities, and there's an awful lot of knowledge on those communities now. So much so that it's very difficult at times to respond and reply because people are responding very quickly. It's a very useful resource to have.
Yeah, yeah. So AdamRoue, what's the story behind that?
So I was under my own name, and I moved jobs, and they were a little bit nervous of me posting on forums as my own name, so they asked me to change it. So my eldest son is Adam, and my wife's maiden name is Rue. So I put the two together for a lack of inspiration. Really, he was. I think he was about one at the time, so very prominent. Well, still very prominent in my life, but he was very to the fore then.
Wow, I can't believe that it, as in, I don't know if, and nowadays, if someone's employer asked them to do that, whether they would bother doing it.
Yeah, there were different times. People were still wary of, making horrible mistakes on the internet and causing your partner and your employer issues by your comments. I think maybe it was only 8 years ago when the advice came from Microsoft MVP Central about putting the disclaimer in your footer to say this is your opinion and not that of Microsoft or your employer.
Wow, wow. I've never seen that disclaimer, and so I've got to say it's not in any of mine. But I think most people know that my opinion's my opinion. Yeah, interesting. I did not know. I had no idea that was the case, and that employers would consider that being a problem, that you could give the wrong advice and it would be attached to you.
Well, I just think at the time, because it was 12 years ago, there was a lot of unknown, and there still are unknowns and employees going on to forums and the internet and emails, and it just leaves themselves open to I don't know, maybe a tarnishing of their brand, which maybe they don't want to be associated with. I think actually now it's flipped the other way. They want to see people contributing, and these forums and resources like LinkedIn, if a prospect is looking to engage with a partner, it's one of the things that they go and research to see how active those businesses are in the community and what their staff are like on LinkedIn. So they see it as a PR tool, and it's probably gone a full 180 since the early days.
Yeah, makes sense. Tell me, what changes have you seen in the program over the years?
Originally I was a nav MVP, and we had very little interaction with the product group 12 years ago, and I made myself move across to the MVP side of AX when I moved into the AX world. I kind of said to the MVP program, well, I'm not doing Navision anymore, so I can't be a Navision MVP. So you either re-award me into the what was then the AX channel, or just drop it, because I can't help on the nav side anymore. So I want to let that go. But the whole bringing together into biz apps on the MVP side has been a big change, and I'm not I'm not convinced it's working, because we get the distribution lists and they're very CE dominated, CRM dominated, asking questions. And I know we are all one family, but we still all sit in our silos of product, and that will go in the long term. But reading about or finding out that different CRM MVPs have different issues in areas doesn't really resonate. And I'm sure if any of the AX or NAV people ask questions, then they don't engage with those either. So it's an interesting prospect that Microsoft have developed to bring us all together, and we'll see where it goes. But Microsoft themselves have become an awful lot more engaged. So in the early days, the MVP program, from a biz apps perspective, as it was separately then, but there was not much engagement with the product group, either NAV or AX, and they've done a much better job of driving interaction with those groups in the last 15 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So interesting that those changes have come about. With Microsoft combining, even it started when they changed the word, from ERP and CRM to Dynamics 365. Um, one of the interesting type of views I have around this is that, if you needed brain surgery, you'd go to a brain surgeon. If you needed your bones fixed, you'd go to an orthopedic surgeon. And they're two totally different skill sets, even though we'd call them both surgeons. And then, but we're doing the same thing, right? We're saying, hey, hang on, we're calling you all Dynamics 365 or Biz Apps, Microsoft Business Applications specialists. Yet within it now, I think there's something like 26 different discrete applications now that sit under that banner. How can one be a guru in all 26 plus applications?
I think the simple answer to that is that you can't. You can only be a specialist in your own area. The trick and the challenge is to have the awareness of the wider platform. So when I work for Columbus in the UK, and we have quite a few deals now that include CE and Ops. Although I'm now using old names because they've changed them again. But
Yeah. C doesn't actually exist anymore, right?
no, it doesn't. And Ops
I
doesn't
think
exist.
that
It's
no.
finance or supply chain management. But when we go in and do these joint projects, they're very different, even though they're one. So the CRM side, D365 sales, and the field service, it's very much a what do you want to do, configure and customize and develop, and it's build your solution how you envisage it. Whereas from a supply chain and finance, the kind of remit is, can we use it as standard? Can we try and adopt it? Because changes are or can become expensive. It's probably less so now in the one version world, because you don't get stuck on previous versions, which is another huge shift in the ERP world for us and for our customers. But it does mean with extensions and driving code outside of the base that we are protecting our customers from getting stuck on versions. And I think there's a whole I don't know how many thousands of customers there are around the world that are stuck on their AX4 2009 or 2012 and will struggle to move.
Are you seeing a lot of people in this space moving to the cloud, or are you still seeing a lot of on-prem?
The vast majority are going to the cloud. We've had some that have gone on-prem, and they went early on-prem, which led to its own challenges. But one of the customers did it for historical reasons, and we tried to convince them not to. They are actually now looking to move to the cloud from on-premise. But one of the companies did it for data residency and their own control. They did not want to move to the cloud, and they're very happy being on-premise. But I would say, four. Well, I was going to say 4 out of 5 are going into the cloud, but probably in the last 18 months, everyone's gone to the cloud. It's that embracing of that new approach.
How do you have that discussion with prospective customers around the benefits of cloud over on-premise?
An awful lot of them now come expecting a cloud solution. So really, it's only the ones that come with the idea of wanting it to be on premise, and then it's really challenging the why of that. Because from a licensing perspective, if you go cloud based, you are purchasing the infrastructure as a service, and it's fully Microsoft managed. So you get all of that as part of your license fee. Whereas you go on premise, you are managing and maintaining all of your own hardware, which is a big undertaking depending upon who you are and where you are compared to what Microsoft are doing. I mean, the data center explosion that they've done in the last few years has been significant. So you get an awful lot more choice. So they're certainly investing, as they always have done, invested an awful lot of money.
Yeah, and it really does address the data residency issue for more and more countries nowadays. When the data centers are in country, they're covered by those local laws, etc. And the only other one I've heard is around security, which you hear less and less these days. That's more secure on our premise than Microsoft's, and of course, that is very easy to prove massively wrong. And the data breaches and stuff we still see go on in big companies around the world. Obviously, people are still bought into that belief, though.
Yeah, very, very much so, and it's kind of being the master of their own destiny. But when they try and compare resources to Microsoft, they would quickly see how inferior they are to the resources at Microsoft's disposal.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me, you're 15 years in the MVP program. It's a fair amount of time. Do you still want to be in it? Do you still value it? What's your kind of opinion of it now, 15 years in?
It is very pleasing to be recognised and rewarded. The whole contribution assessment isn't transparent, so you don't get to see the results of what you do, but the program managers either say you've done enough or there are new people coming in. And it is certainly something people aspire to. And you do get asked, how do you become an MVP? And it's really about, for me, it's about enjoying what you do. I've always been on the forums to help people, but I also used to help myself. So I used to learn the software by answering the questions of customers because they were real life questions. So I would go away and try and answer them, and I would learn whilst doing it. And I've moved on from being a general consultant at Columbus to being more of an architect, but I still want to understand the software and probably even more importantly, understand the wider solutions. So I am still going on to the forums and still trying to understand the challenges across the world and how we can approach and solve those problems. And as much I enjoy reading my fellow MVPs and non-MVPs responses, and you see people coming through not necessarily trying to be MVPs, but just engaged in trying to help people, and they do stand out. But there's lots of different avenues now. So people are doing conferences, and they do an amazing amount of conferences and do shows. There's the D365 Saturdays. There's podcasts. There's so many ways you can contribute to the community, and they all count for Microsoft, which is all great. Personally, it's still a labor of love, but I don't put in as much as I used to, I would suggest. So I'm expecting year on year not to be renewed. And when it comes, when the last day comes, it'll be c'est la vie. I've had a very good run, so it will be no problem.
So are you noticing a new breed of MVPs coming through? You know, since you started, there would have been probably, you would know every single MVP by name. Now that wouldn't be so easy.
In the ops world, there still aren't that many. Certainly not compared to the wider D365, the sales and the CE side.
Yeah, there's 100. I think there's 168 all up in biz apps nowadays.
Yeah.
As far as I know, yeah, roundabout. Yeah,
I'd imagine less than 30 on the ops side. It's always been a smaller number. So I do get to see them at the old tech conferences. You'd meet up, and I did get to go to the MVP summit last year, this year, and I'm going again next year. So it's really good to connect with people that you see online and kind of have virtual relationships with.
yeah. How important is that MVP summit to building those relationships with your fellow MVPs?
It is. I don't want to say it's critical because it's not that, but it is a really good opportunity to meet people, and you get direct access to the product group, and the sessions are very focused and you are engaged. So last time we had, I think there were maybe 15 of us went, and it opened with Mohammed Alam talking to us in a very small office room, and we had 3 days worth of intensive sessions looking at all of the new functionality that was coming and due to be coming out in wave 1 and 2 this year. And then we went to Advanta on the final day, and they were showing us their kind of work in progress on elements like revenue recognition, which is I think just been released in the October release, and that was back in March. So we were contributing, and they were presenting to us, and we were feeding directly back into that product group, which is always useful to them. And we also get a heads up of what's coming and what functionality is in the roadmap.
If you were to leave the program, what do you reckon you'd miss the most?
It probably would be the access to the kind of direct access we've got to the product group and that small group of people that will respond to you. It's it's almost at times like a direct access to Microsoft support, but actually the people behind it. I don't believe it's overused by the ops people, but it's certainly nice to have that and to have the summit to have and build those connections. But there is the MVP Reconnect program where ex MVPs join, and it's a wider group. So we still have that wider reach. The Microsoft themselves, the product group interaction isn't every month, so we haven't had some recently, depending on how busy these people get, because they are very busy people. But it's certainly better than it was 10 years ago. So I'd miss the kind of different areas of the product group team presenting and asking our opinion on what's coming around the corner.
What's your advice you'd give to an aspiring MVP in the F&O space? Oh, it's not F&O anymore, is it? It's what is it? What are we calling it? It's finance and supply chain management.
Yeah. Don't go into marketing would be my obvious advice, because renaming everything is dreadful. But I think you need to do it because you enjoy it. So whatever you are doing, do it for enjoyment, because if you're doing it solely focused to be an MVP, you probably won't make it, because you can't keep that level of focus up. And even if you do make it, keeping those contributions up year on year is a labor of love. And if you are doing it just for that title, it'll be very difficult to keep it up.
Yeah, so true, so true. Awesome. Well, I always like to finish a show with a few random questions. which are about life more than anything else. So you ready for them?
Certainly.
Your random questions?
Yep.
Okay, here's your first one. What's your best scar story?
I have two on my forehead. One when I was very small and my dad was pushing me on a swing and I came off at the kind of apex and landed firmly on my forehead. And then about 3 years ago, when I was rushing to get the children to the swimming pool, I pulled the boot of my car onto my own forehead and then went into the swimming area with my head covered in blood. So don't rush. Is my advice there.
Classic. If you could arm wrestle an historical figure, who would you choose and why?
I don't know. That's quite a tough one. Maybe I would go for, I think maybe Richard III. I would like to go back and have an arm wrestle with him and find out if he really did murder those two princes in the tower.
What state or country do you never want to go back to?
I don't think I've had a bad experience anywhere. I've traveled an awful lot. I've been very lucky in life and fortunate. But I don't think there's anywhere I wouldn't go back to. There's lots of places I don't go back to because there's so much to see in the world. But
yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
nowhere,
cool. I would say.
What stereotype do you completely live up to?
I suppose it would be the British sarcastic dry humour.
Nice. Yes. And for a lot of Americans, you won't understand that. Which celebrity do you shamelessly follow in the news?
Oh, I'm not. Although I am on social media, I'm not really a great hanger-on of single celebrities. I do follow Dua Lipa, who is a singer, because I saw her a couple of years ago in Bournemouth when she wasn't famous, and she was just really good, and she's become an international star. So I've followed her, and she is a very beautiful lady who posts very nice Instagram pictures.
Awesome. Would you rather be the funniest or the smartest person in the room?
The funniest.
I love it. Well, that's all my questions, Stephen. If people want to connect with you online or in forums, or where should they find you?
So on the Dynamics communities, I am Weaveriski, and I am Weaveriski on Twitter. I'm not a prolific poster. Anything I do post is generally on D365. I am AdamRoue on the dynamicsuser.net, and I am myself. I'm Stephen Weaver on LinkedIn, so anyone can feel free to contact me.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this series of podcasts and getting into the lives of various MVPs from across the world sitting in Microsoft Business Applications so far. Listen, I'd really appreciate if you would give me a review on iTunes. If you go to nz365guy.com/iTunes, it'll auto take you to that page. You've got to get about 20 reviews before you actually show up as having any. And currently I'm sitting at 10, so I need to bump those numbers up. So I would really appreciate if you went to nz365guy.com/iTunes, and it'll auto redirect you back to the iTunes page. Just need to log in there, give us a 5-star and a great message that comes straight through to me when they go live. So I'd love to see that and would really appreciate it. For this podcast, you can see the full show notes at nz365guy.com/171. That is 171. See you next time.